Okay, so taking a look at yesterday's assignment, we had the front page all done, but on the back page, let me address a few questions that I had. The most common question was this one right here. Okay, and I would guess because, well, first it's the first one, so everyone got to it. I hope. Okay, and second, this fraction up here. So what I saw on the papers that I spoke to students about, first I knew we were going to have questions on these. I know that some of you made mistakes on these, and I'm hoping everyone tried 16 even. Those are a lot of words. Okay, so yeah, it should have been pretty easy. So first step that I saw, all the papers I saw multiplied by 2. Okay, they got it to 32. But from there, I saw the most common thing I saw was first students trying to figure out, okay, I know that this means like I have a power and I have a radical, but I can't remember what. And then some of them remembered, yeah, it's square root on the outside, so you have like the 2 there, even though we don't show it. Okay, and then you have x to the 5th on the inside. You could either write it like that, or you could write it like that. Either way means the same thing. Okay, I will tell you that is the complex way to do it. However, you could do it that way. And from there, you would get rid of the 5 by taking the 5th root of 32, which brings you to 2. So the square root of x equals 2. And then you square both sides, you get x equals 4. Okay, so now before I go any further, are there questions on what I did there? The way I would approach this problem, mostly because I think it's quicker and it lends itself very well to this problem, which looks like this one on steroids, like on that commercial where the guy's lifting weights and he keeps getting bigger and bigger each time they flash back. Reminds me of high school. Okay, so this right here, if this is 5 halves, our ultimate goal, or x's goal in life, is to become x to the 1st power. That's its goal. Okay? I know, I can do it. So if we raise this to the, what power will make this 1? The reciprocal, 2/5. If we raise it to the 2/5 power on both sides, that brings us, x has now reached its goal. Okay? X is now to the 1st power, and 32 to the 2/5 power is the same thing as this over here, okay, which is 4. Okay, it's the 5th root of 32 squared. Or if you want to square 32 and then take the 5th root of that, you could, but that's tougher. Okay? So much easier, I think, if you go this route. Some of you are like, well, I understood this better, and that's fine. But when we get over to number 12, move your 28 over, so you get your power by itself over here, that quantity. So 156 minus 28 is 128. Okay? And then from there, you want to get rid of that power, so you can unlock all this stuff in here. Now, once again, you could write it as the 3rd root of this thing to the 7th power, or you could just raise that whole thing to the 3/7 power. I know that's a lot of parentheses and stuff, but mathematically that's correct notation. You raise that to the 3/7 power. These two things cancel. I'm now left with 6x plus 10. Okay, and this right here, if I think of 7th root, now once again, one thing we didn't see in either of these problems, if the bottom number is even, what do we need to have? Plus minus, right? Because you're taking an even root then. Okay, the bottom number's been odd in both of those. Okay, so like this was a, on this, oh actually this one was a square root. But then we can't have a negative, so it wouldn't matter. We'll come back to that. But right here, what's the 7th root of 128? 7th root of 128. It's not 8. It's 2. I think I think everyone's, maybe those yelling 8, I'm hoping you're just cubing the 2 then. Okay. And that 2 cubed is 8. So 6x plus 10 equals 8. And from there you get x is equal to, you finish it up, x equals negative 1/3. Okay? Subtract 10, divide by 6. Okay? Everyone good there? Yes?
When you said that if the bottom number is even, then you need a plus or minus, is that the bottom number of the reciprocal? Or
Yeah, the reciprocal. Yep. Okay. Oh, yeah, so on number 11, it wouldn't matter because, I'm sorry, I was referencing up here. It's the reciprocal. That's a good question there, Jordan. Okay, so we're good on the 4. Hey, any questions on 11 and 12? That make it a little more, it's negative 1/3. Okay, that make it a little easier to understand, I'm hoping. Okay, 13 through 15. So we drop in some inequality symbols. Okay, we treat it like an equal sign. Okay, you get root x minus 1, negative 4 here. We subtract 3 over. We get negative 4. We divide by negative 4. What happens when you divide by a negative? Flip the sign, so that becomes positive 1. So let's make sure everyone's with that. We move the 3. We divide it by a negative, which flips the sign. Okay, so from that point, we now need to square both sides. X minus 1 is equal to 1, which means x equals, or it's not equal, I'm sorry, it's less than or equal to 2. How many got it? Okay, now that is partially, that is 1/2 of your answer. Okay, so here's the area that we didn't go into yesterday. It's really not a complex thing to understand. But what can this not be inside the radical? It can't be negative. How come? Tell your neighbor, why can't that be negative? Okay, pause. Everyone's eyes and ears back up here. How come that cannot be negative? Yes. It wouldn't be a real answer. When can that be negative? Okay, hold on. Guys, I have about 1/3 of you. The key piece here. When can that be a negative number? Someone's saying it. Yeah, when it's an odd radical. Okay, radicand here. If this index here was odd, it could be negative. Right? The cubed root of negative 27 is negative 3. Okay? But if it's an even, you can't have a negative inside here. Rory?
So about like the first part, I didn't end up dividing by a negative when I did this, so I didn't like change the sign, and I don't know like when that happens.
Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip that sign. So when I divide it by negative 4 here, that flips that sign over.
Okay, so if I square it, it still flips?
It's still, it doesn't change. It doesn't change again from here to here. It stays, for now on, until you multiply by or divide by a negative again, it stays the same direction.
Well, I didn't divide by negative 4. I just squared it first.
Okay, but then you would have to,
So it would switch once I squared it?
oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you squared
I squared that.
and then squared that. But then you would be multiplying, by squaring this side, you'd be multiplying by negative 4. Okay, does everyone hear? That's a good question. If you went the other direction, so I haven't had anyone bring that up ever, but if I squared this first before moving that negative 4 and square this, it still flips because by squaring this, you're multiplying it by negative 4. Okay, that's a good question. So it doesn't matter which one you do first. You guys, so let's go back to this right here. This cannot be 0. That means x minus 1, it's a whole separate problem. X minus 1 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Meaning another restriction here, if you want to think of it that way, is x has to be greater than or equal to 1. So my solution set here is, it's two things have to happen. X has to be bigger than 1 or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 2. That is my solution. Now, is that going to happen on 14? No, how come? It's an odd root. Okay? The answer for 14, x is less than 322.5. Okay? So this one, if you completed it, x is less than 322.5. If you struggled on that one, let me know. We'll talk about it. Will it happen on 14 or 15? Could it happen? It could potentially happen. Doesn't mean it always will, and there's times when it won't. I'll explain those, but you always have to check it. Okay? Well, let me explain it now. If for some reason this said x is, if my answer here said x is greater than 1/2, and my restriction down here was x is greater than 1, well, then you've already covered that with the first answer. You wouldn't have to put both of them. Does that make sense? Okay. We'll see another problem like that today. But number 15. All right. What was the answer everyone got? Matt? Okay, so 65 and 1/3. That would be the one I would expect everyone to have gotten last night. Okay? And not put 0.3 repeating or rounding it, just put 1/3. Okay? From there, we would have to set this part has to be greater than or equal to 0, and anytime you have that, it's x is greater than or equal to 0. We're not adding or subtracting anything there. So our restriction then, or excuse me, our solution set, x is greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 65 and 1/3. Okay? Good. That's what you had there. All right. Any questions? Last piece. There's our answer for number 16. 1.76. First place. Second place. Notice we use the same equation, just putting different values in for t. They have a difference of 1.76 feet. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention back up here? Hey, focus please. Matt, you need one? Here you go. Why don't you grab it? Sorry about that. Hey, number 18. I want you to take a look at that one. I want you to complete that problem first. Okay? Number 18. It's on the back. Practice A. Okay. When you go through it, we add our 4 over. Divide by 3. And in this case, x is greater than or equal to 9. Okay? Now, if you say, well, this can't be negative in here, and you go through that whole process, you go, well, x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Well, that's true. However, that takes that into account already, right? You can't have a number that is greater than or equal to 9 that is not greater than or equal to 0. So therefore, you don't have to put that. Okay? You put that. If you put both of these, then you're taking into account that you're saying that x could also be between 0 and 9, and that's incorrect. Okay? You have to have it's greater than or equal to 9. Okay? So that would be one of those situations where you wouldn't have to put both answers in. Okay, so think about what you're doing.